Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and I just wanted to drop in for a quick second to tell you that this podcast is really gaining popularity, and in order for us to continue growing like this, I'd love it if you could rate and review us on iTunes. Plus, I'm always excited to hear feedback and continue to improve our content based on what you want to hear. I know I'm in. Are you? How does Zach LaVine's ACL injury impact the Timberwolves? Did the Warriors steal the playmaker that the Cavs really needed? What does it mean to choke in a game? The only question left is, say it with me, you win? Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown podcast, and also the simulcast live on Periscope with me, of course, and that guy, Dave, Coach Dave Dufour. Dave, thanks for joining me today. Again, as always, on Mondays, we do our podcast, and it's kind of exciting to kind of do this on two platforms at once.
Yeah, this is fun. We have a good time doing the live post-game shows, so we figured we would make ourselves even more accessible. So, yeah, let's see how it goes.
Yeah, so strap in, sports fans, because we're going to have a nice, great conversation. And if you miss any part of this, you can always listen to it on iTunes pretty much after this is over. And then don't forget, what we're going to do something new as well is we're going to cover the Louisville, Virginia game. We're going to do some college basketball. So we'll have a halftime and a post-game show today, later on. The game starts at 4 p.m. Pacific. So join us here and hopefully Facebook Live and YouTube as well for that. I'm excited about that. Are you, Dave?
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. In the lead up to championship tournaments and the Final Four, we figured we might as well start watching some of these games and talking about them a little bit, get familiar with them, and we're starting with what should be a good one with Louisville and Virginia both in the top 10. So
yeah. I'm excited to see, the Virginia pack line defense and see if that's going to sway me to be more of a proponent of it. I'm not always that excited about what they do. And by the way, one of the reasons, and I kind of got into it on Twitter a few weeks ago, was this notion of you cannot give up baseline. Like it's as if it's all hell will break loose. And I remember learning that when I was a kid, like running 2-3 zone. You stand out of bounds if you have to, but what I've shown a couple of those tweets was you could ride the guy under the basket and all the way out the other side, and it's nothing is lost. And yet, of course, a couple of clips I used an example like the guy could have had a pass on a cutter and he missed it, whatever. But still,
sure.
The point being that it doesn't have to be the end all be all. And yet, here we are with that, and people were getting angry at me as usual.
Well, I don't know. Growing up, ours was always no middle, and if you can force a guy baseline, the baseline acts as an extra defender. Mm-hmm. So we were always taught to force baseline. Maybe that's just my East Coast, basketball training. But yeah, that's how we were. Because, when you have good ball handlers and guys that are good at penetrating, if they're able to go middle, it's not hard when the defense collapses in the middle to hit shooters on the outside. So we were always taught, you want to send them baseline.
Absolutely, and that's an extra defender, yeah, like you said. So, all right, well, let's move on to some of the pending news of the day in the NBA. And by the way, if you're out there at Periscope, give us some hearts. Let us know you're out there. I love to see the hearts going. Yes, love them. And then if you have any questions, we can probably try and grab a few while you're going on.
I think we've got a few.
Okay.
If you can pull them up, yeah.
Well, I see right now the best player, Lonzo Ball in college. I might be a little bit behind as I'm watching it in my browser. But did you see a good question? Oh, if you compare any big man in the NBA with Al Horford, who would it be? That's interesting. I guess, are we talking about if you could pair any big man? You know what? I feel like I saw this question. Maybe he asked me this on Twitter. Any feelings for that, Dave?
I think that Paul Millsap was a great guy to have next to him. But I think Horford is a 5. I don't think he's a 4. So, you when you talk about pairing him with a big man, do you mean like Dwight Howard? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I used to think that he'd be much better as a 4. That was his natural position. But now where we're going with the league, there is no question that he's, he just shouldn't be chasing guys out in the perimeter on defense. And he can stretch it a little bit. As a 5, it's probably better than it would be as stretching it as a 4.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about like Zach LaVine, because that's a real bummer right now for a lot of these guys who are fans of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Did you see the play when he got hurt?
Yeah, I did. And, non-contact ACL injury, very common way to do it. And it looked like he just planted his leg. And I don't know if he hyperextended it or not. It's tough to tell from the angle I watched it on. But it's a tough break. But, if you look on the bright side, the way ACL surgeries are done now and with the rehab, these guys come back and they're better. They have time to do skill development, which they don't during a season. Look at Jabari Parker's development in the last 2 years, and compared to the way he came in the league. Like now he's shooting threes at a very, very good number. He's so much more athletic. And when you've got a guy like Zach LaVine, who's already a freak athlete, I really think that you're going to see him come back better than he has been. I mean, he's a hard worker anyway. And yeah, it's a tough break because he's a young guy. I mean, you never want to see anyone get hurt. But, if you look on the bright side, there is a path to improving his game because of the ACL injury. Like trying to find the silver lining,
Absolutely. We had a good question, actually, where they were asking, do we give Denver, really quickly before I forget this, because here's the problem with Periscope is that these questions go. But before I forget, do we give Denver a chance against the Warriors in the first-round playoff game, series?
No. I think it would be a 4-0 sweep. And I love Jokic probably more than almost anybody. But no, I think it's a 4-game sweep.
Right, I agree. Well, yeah, maybe they sneak one game in there when the Warriors miss some threes or whatever, but they don't really have it. And let's get back to LaVine real quickly. Yeah, really, I'm sure he'll come back and he'll be fine. Is it a blessing? I think that the Wolves have their number one pick, but either way, they were on their way to getting that lottery anyway, and it's a deep draft. So, I don't know. It's this weird thing where I hate to see people who, like, there's nothing. It was not an injury. It was just sort of a cut, and that was it, and it went. I think people were wondering if we should criticize Thibodeau for this kind of stuff because it's overplaying or not, but it didn't appear to me that, LaVine is playing more minutes than he should be.
Yeah, and also ACL injuries are not overuse injuries.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's just like an Achilles. It's not an overuse injury.
I've talked to guys about that. There seems to be a little bit of doubt. I feel like with the Achilles too, but I don't know. I mean, I've heard that. Yeah, it's absolutely like when Kobe did it. It had nothing to do with the fact that he played 51 minutes every game for 10 straight games. I have talked to other people who were like, there could have been signs, but he was ignoring of small tears or whatever, and maybe pain in other places in his body that were really the Achilles talking, and then boom. It just finally snapped, and so how is that not necessarily related to playing a lot or playing the game? But I think what we can conclude is that playing the game of basketball isn't really the best thing for anyone's body. Sure,
yeah, there's always a risk of injury. I mean, if if Zach LaVine's on the court, there's a chance he could get hurt. So I mean, there's an argument there. We should just shut everybody down.
Right. Play on play on a trampoline. Like what's that game? Have you ever seen that game? They play basketball on a trampoline. Ball. Yeah, it's awesome. Okay. LaVine was playing 37 minutes a game, by the way, which that's whatever. Now, I mean, listen, when if LeBron gets hurt,
yes,
we will point to that. I would imagine because
but LeBron is old. I mean, not old, but like he's 31, 32, and Zach LaVine's like 22 years old. This is not an overuse injury. It's just a freak injury that just happens, and he'll be fine. They replaced the ACL with like Achilles tendon. So like they put something way stronger in there. The ACL is like the thickness of a rubber band. It's nothing.
Okay, fair enough. So so it's
you could have a torn ACL and not know.
Yeah, well, that's what it looked like. It looked like LaVine kind of was walking a little bit around and sort of, probably was shocked as anybody when they actually found out. I don't think it was a complete tear either, so that was part of it. So, yeah, he should be fine. This will be a good chance for him to continue working on his skills. Probably maybe even increase certain muscles that he didn't know he didn't have. That's the other thing. Like when Steph got his ankle injury stuff, when he ended up coming back and they kind of corrected it, he ended up having a lot of different muscles he didn't have before, and he won 2 MVPs. So, fantastic stuff. Hopefully on that one as he rehabs. But speaking of fantastic, did you? I actually watched the Super Bowl. I kind of violated my moral disgust of the game of football itself and watched the Super Bowl. Did you have a chance to watch it?
I did. I missed out on the Super Bowl party I was going to go to and decided to watch at home. I did not watch the first quarter and just decided, you know what, I'll sit on the couch and watch the game. And at halftime, it was like 28-3 or 21-3 or whatever it was. And like a lot of people, I really thought, wow, that's it. And man, Tom Brady, he's just too good. It's not fair.
Yeah. Well, the best thing I think I could take away from that, as far as just I had one eye on the game. I finally got to go to a party. I had not. My wife and I were really, and my family was just upset all morning because we didn't get invited anywhere. And then all of a sudden, the last second, we got the invite. It was our neighbor 4 doors down. So luckily, if it wasn't that situation, we probably wouldn't have stayed and watched the whole game. But the thing I'm going to take away from it is that you should never give up. And it was over, right? They're down 21, I think, in the start of the fourth quarter. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Well, so these comebacks with more passing in the NFL, you can equate the passing in the NFL to three-point shooting in the NBA. As the passing numbers go up, which they have, and as the three-point shooting goes up, you're going to see way more of these improbable comebacks because there's going to be so much more fluctuation. Guys will get hot from three, and all of a sudden, it's easy to. In the NBA, if you can shut down your opponent 7 straight possessions and hit 7 straight threes, that's a 21-point comeback. So we're going to see more and more of these as it becomes more prevalent. This is the effect of analytics on football.
Yeah, and that way I had not envisioned that we were going to be able to make that comparison. So kudos to you. I suppose the long two is the run game in football. And when you watch them run the ball now, because I don't really watch football anymore, but it's like, why are they doing that? And when I'm watching, you're going to get like 3 yards. And you're going to waste a down to do that. And, I wonder if we're going to move to that as well at some point where it's not going to be hardly any running. But that is a great point. Now, the other question that I had was, does this mean that there was simply no adjustment made by the Falcons? Like they were just cold from passing and then got hot and it was simply a matter of them getting hot? Or did something change that unlocked the passing game?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, from watching the game, it really just looked like the Patriots came out and made a great adjustment at halftime. The Falcons didn't milk the clock like they should have. When you've got a lead, you want to burn time off the clock, especially in football. And they just didn't do that. And next thing you know, the Patriots are right back in it. And then when the Falcons needed to move the ball to run time off, when they needed a first down, they just couldn't get them. So, yeah, but it was fun. It was a fun game. It was a lot of fun. The commercials were pretty decent. It was the most political Super Bowl commercial set I've ever seen in my life.
Huh. I kind of didn't keep my eye on it, as I'm realizing. Give me an example of something that was political that you saw in the commercials.
So Audi did a commercial about equal pay. 84 Lumber did a commercial about immigrants coming from Mexico. It felt like every other commercial was something, some political statement. I can't remember that ever happening in my lifetime. So
yeah, well, I mean, obviously that's a focus group. Like they're doing the numbers, they're looking at that, knowing that they can, it won't be a problem for their brand, I suppose, because obviously that's the name of the game for them. So. It's times being what they are. If you've ever read Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, the times are wicked, I suppose is what they called it then. And so this is where we are. It's a fascinating time, and probably in some respects, fascinating could be positive in some ways, but certainly negative in a lot of other ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So back to, let's go back to basketball. That's why everybody's here watching. Which yes. Thanks again for watching on Periscope. So
give us some hearts. I want to see some hearts. I love when they fly by. Hey, yeah. I love it. Thank you.
That's insane. So the Warriors signed the playmaker that the Cavs needed Briante Weber.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
Briante Weber is someone that people don't really know much about. Dave, I want to throw it to you. Give us the lowdown of what he was doing in the D League, where he played college ball, and what kind of player he's most comparable to.
So he played at VCU. So he played for Shaka Smart, and they had the Havoc Diamond Press. So he's a high-intensity player. Reminds me a lot of Patrick Beverly, kind of a smaller guard, 6'2", 165 pounds, maybe 170. He looks like he's filled out a little bit. But in the D League this season, he's scoring like 16.5 with 7.5 boards and 7.5 assists, shooting 36% from three. So the guy can play. And I've watched some of his D League film just because he's a guy. I mean, I went to VCU, so I kind of followed his career, and I love his tenacity on defense. I'm also a huge Pat Beverly fan, and so I was watching some tape on him. And I was just thinking, wow, this is a guy that should be a backup point guard in the NBA. I'm surprised that he hasn't gotten more of a shot. He's fully recovered from his knee injury, and he looks good. And man, the Warriors got a steal.
It's funny because you're talking about a guy who is like a playmaker. He can handle the ball. He can make some plays on both sides of the ball, and he's got a lot of ability. It's almost as if there was someone else who might have been able to use this player. Yeah.
I mean, they totally stole Cleveland's playmaker completely.
Yeah, and it's almost funny because LeBron goes public and says we need this stuff, and he's basically calling out the front office, which I think is shitty. And yet they miss it. It's weird because remember, like the way the D League works, he was a free agent in the D League. He could have signed with any team, and here he is now. What I'm seeing from him is Patrick Beverly is not a bad comp, and when he's ripping guys in the D League. Now remember, the D League has major talent, major ball handling talent, and if you're going to be cold ripping guys in midcourt. That's impressive stuff, and the fact that he can shoot a little bit, he hops into a lot of his threes, so I'm already in love. This is a major coup, and it could have also been more of like, let's keep him away from the Cavs as much as let's bring him on the Warriors.
Right. Well, the thing is, man, like I actually think he's a guy the Warriors can use. I mean, it's more guard depth for a team that like Ian Clark has been struggling lately. McCaw has looked good in flashes. So it's a nice young guy to have on the team. And I think like my hope is that they keep this guy and they sign him, at least for next year. I mean, I think that this is going to be a good signing for them. As they're trying to keep minutes down on their starters. You don't know what's going to happen with Iguodala this summer and with Livingston. So, defensive guard depth is important for this team. And if you look, I mean, they're probably going to lose Ian Clark this summer. He's going to get paid, and deservedly so. He's a good player, and so he could be the Ian Clark replacement potentially.
Yeah,
if it works out,
And then McCaw can replace Iguodala. And they might not miss much of the beat at all going into next year, which is, I mean, listen, I like Iguodala and I like Ian Clark, and I'd feel bad if they're gonna. Well, certainly Ian Clark is going to be in a good situation next year, regardless. But I love this idea of like developing talent, finding them, bringing them in, plugging them in. It's kind of like I can't believe I'm going to bring football up again, but the Niners used to do this, right? The Niners, from the Joe Montana years through the Steve Young years, would just keep plugging guys into the system, and it was like the all-star, amazing player after amazing player.
Yeah. And so, I'm excited to see what he does. Hopefully he gets some time. I wonder if we might see Steph Curry take a game off. I know he just missed a couple because of the stomach flu. Apparently Kevin Durant's ball hogging right now, which I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, but
well, he didn't ball hog in the game they lost to the Kings, where he took like I think 10 shots and missed a whole bunch. It was a weird game. I don't know. You didn't get a chance to watch it. It sounds like, but I watched the first half and then the fourth quarter, and it was weird. And certainly, the Kings. The Kings obviously have some things to offer when they are out there on the court, and then certainly it was like basically the boogie fest where they just They just went to him, and it was a fascinating matchup, almost worthy probably of a breakdown of just watching Draymond go one-on-one against Bookie, and them taking turns getting each other was really amazing. And then, but you saw the last shot of the game, right? As a coach, you got to say, well, listen, we ran a great play down by one, we get a layup, and Steph just misses it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know what? I know where you're leading me with this conversation, and sometimes you just miss a shot. And like I'll take Steph Curry on a layup over anybody else. I mean, he's the best layup finisher in the NBA statistically and, from the eye test. So, if you're going to miss one, hey, that's going to happen.
I guess so. I mean, I thought what he should have done was, and people were asking me about this because it's like, because we can get to the choking notion of it in a second. But like, he kind of had to adjust a little bit because the defender came over really hard to Tolliver to contest. So great contest, but he should have then in the air brought it back down, wrapped it around, and given it to Iggy, who was coming in bounds for the winning layup. And then even more time would have gone off, and then it would have been impossible for the Kings to get a good shot off. So is that water sponsored? No?
No.
Okay, good. We'll get a sponsor for that because this is not sponsored either.
We need a sponsor.
So anyway, if you're listening to the podcast, you don't know Dave just took a drink of water from his probably his eco-friendly water bottle.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm drinking out of my my Arrowhead, non-recyclable or recyclable thing. So anyway, The point being is, I think he choked, and I now got into a weird semantic argument on Twitter right after that about what choking means. Dave, come on. When you get an open shot you can make that for the game in a really, tense situation, you miss it, that you choke. That's a choke. That, Charles Smith choked against the Bulls in '93. Like, that's a choke, isn't it?
I guess. I mean, yeah, you may have choked that spot, but for me, like, I saved choke. I think he just missed a layup, right? Like, I saved choke for, like, Christmas Day when the Warriors blew like a 25-point lead and lost. The 3-1 finals comeback as a choke. That's a choke. For sure.
Okay.
And the Thunder choked before that, right? Like, so.
Well, okay. So, so your choking seems to be limited to a sort of a team-wide macro assessment of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because to me, I guess I'm much more focused on the details. Like, choking is the guy who misses the shot. Okay. So if you miss a three to win the game, that's a 40% proposition, right? So you're not just like choking, but when you get a layup, when you get like a little floater from 4 feet, like that to me is like, you lost your concentration for a second. The sphincter got tight. Like that's choking to me. So
especially a 70% finisher on layups,
right? Yeah.
And that was a gimme layup. I mean, if you were gonna call one shot a choke, and you called that one, okay.
Okay, now how about this? Is a turnover a choke? Like, was the turnover to James Worthy by Sleepy Floyd in '82, when he turned the ball over when they're down by one after Jordan hit the shot or whatever? Is that choking?
I don't know, man. It's tough because, you're pressing in that situation. You're trying to make a play. I don't know. I think choke is such a harsh word, and this is mostly semantics. It's not like there's no real definition. No one's ever defined it. This is just more like semantics. I feel like choke is a harsh word for when you mess up. I don't necessarily think it's always about the pressure. Sometimes it's about the situation. Like, again, you got 3 seconds to get the ball down court. You're more likely to rush and make a mistake.
Right. Okay. So that's different, and I agree with that. But I will say they ran the play. It was really physical. He cut backdoor as another option off of the out of bounds play, which is a really great read. Terrible defense, I thought, by the Kings anyway. And
until the contest.
Until the contest, right. So thank God for Tolliver for getting in there.
I wonder if Curry expected contact, and that's kind of why he kind of went a little short on the layup. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if that was, it was a fantastic contest because he came hard and didn't make contact. And I wonder if Curry expected him to.
Right. Well, okay, that's fair enough. And as we all know, I think a lot of times the natural inclination as the guy's coming, you do shoot it shorter as an adjustment to, like, sometimes you want to shoot it harder because you're thinking, I got to rush it or whatever, and it comes out harder than you want it to be, and then you try and adjust in midair for that. And, whatever. It's a loss. It was a brutal loss. and you look at it this way, they lost in overtime in a game where, Kerr got thrown out, where they got extra shots, the free throws that they wouldn't have normally gotten, and then Draymond technical foul. So those are the things that kill you, even though they're not related, to the end of the game situation in the fourth. But any freebies you gave him earlier really affect that game and didn't have to, and then there you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if the back to the Super Bowl, if the Gostkowski did not miss that extra point last night, then the Patriots aren't going for two consecutive touchdowns. So, I mean, every point matters. This is like if you win a game in November, it counts just as much as a game you win in March to make the playoffs. So, everything matters. And at the point where Kerr got kicked out, it was on a 2-shot shooting foul.
Yeah.
And he got 2 technicals, and Draymond got a technical. So they gave up. It's 5 consecutive free throws.
Yeah.
So, that stuff, it hurts, especially in a game that you go into overtime on.
And then you got Mike Brown coaching you. Never mind. Anyway.
He's a good coach, man.
Is he?
I think he is. He is. The thing is, whether he's a good technician or not, he has the players' respect. He wouldn't be in the NBA as long as he is, as long as he has been, if players and other coaches didn't respect him, and that matters.
Okay.
That matters more in the game. Like having a good coach matters. Like as far as a guy that can make decisions on the court, you've got 3 other guys there to help you out. But for what he was doing, it was fine.
Okay. And by the way, this reminds me of watching the other game from last night with Russ. Let's give him some props because he came down in the clutch and was really good and basically, enabled him to hold on. And he was hitting these like 15-foot bank shots. He had a couple of those. And people kind of yelled at me because I'm like, I don't really remember him banking a lot of those. And those are tough. But,
yeah.
People were yelling at me as if like, oh, of course he does it all the time. And I'm like, I don't think he does it all the time. But, and they weren't necessarily, it wasn't like a bank swish kind of thing. It was like wham and then roll in. But either way, I want to make sure he gives it some props because he played well down the stretch and pretty much that last 3 that he hit, while again, was kind of like, what? But the mechanics of that shot where he swayed his feet forward, it looks so good. And he's been shooting a little bit better from 3 recently that all of a sudden now you're like, okay, maybe the 3 is a viable shot for him.
Yeah, he iced that game completely. First of all, I never expected Oklahoma City to be in the playoff picture. But they're the 7th seed, right? Like, I mean, they're comfortably the 7th seed. They're going to be the 7th seed when the playoffs come. And I really thought that we would see a huge downturn with Cantor out. Russ has been fantastic, and his fourth quarter stuff this season has been incredible. And the craziest part about it is what's coming. You know what's coming, and you just cannot stop it. And that's impressive, man. Like, if I tell you we're going to run a pick and roll as a coach, okay, well, all right, I know how to defend that. And with Russ, what's going to happen. He's going to dribble down, he's going to isolate, and he's going to hit a pull-up jumper, and they still can't stop it. So that's impressive. I'm going to give him props for what he's done in the fourth quarter of this season. It's been phenomenal.
And there's a really problematic defense by the Portland Trailblazers, so that also contributed mightily to what was going on. There was one where they set a screen. They screened the ball screener's man down by the block, and Plumlee literally just like stands there, doesn't move. And so Russ comes off that screen, and he's got 15 or 20 feet of space to get in there and to pull up. And it was like, what are you doing? Like he got like paralyzed or something. Like they had some sort of special, Death Star ray on him, but it was very weird. And that didn't help. And let's throw this out there for the Portland Trailblazers side is, it was a close game, and they have a real shot selection problem. I mean, it was the 3-point game, 4-point game, and they'd come down like jack a 3 without the ball even going below the free throw line. Even though they have some fantastic offense, they have some really great emotion in their offense, and they just don't. They went away from it, hero ball, whatever you want to call it, and it's really frustrating to watch. It kind of gives me the answer why they're struggling so much. Yeah,
Portland is not trusting their ball movement right now. And the trade deadline is fast approaching, a little over 2 weeks, and Damian Lillard has been not great for the last few weeks. I'm not saying that there's a Lillard trade happening. I'm just saying I believe Neil O'Shea is going to have to go out and get this team some help. It just stinks, man, because they locked themselves into these weird contracts that are a few years long, and they're capped out. So I don't know that they have anyone, outside of Alan Crabb. Who's on that team that you would take?
I like Alan Crabb, and he definitely would be a good asset. What about Lillard? I mean, like they're talking about either CJ or Lillard, like trading one of the two of those. It would be extreme, but it could happen, I suppose.
I mean, you'd get a haul for one. You definitely would get a haul for one of those guys. They're young and they can play. I think McCollum is more of a 1 than a 2. And so he's playing kind of a little bit out of position, which may be part of the reason why their defense up, at the point of attack is so rough. Because neither one of them are very good defenders, but you've got the two of them there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, you can get by with one guy typically, but not two.
Right. And then you throw Evan Turner into that, which I never feel like it fits very well. Even like in context like last year when they didn't have him, there's just something about when he's in there and the ball and him, and he'll do well on occasion. I don't think he's having a great season, but there's just something off with that. And again, it's a testament to how close attention you need to pay towards chemistry and how it's not just numbers on a sheet. You got to figure out how they play together. And I think that's it's not hurting as much, but it's not really helping either.
Yeah. Well, and there's some disappointment because they caught fire last year. And they won 50 games, and this year they're below 500 and struggling to even be the 8th seed. And they doubled down on a team that this was the team that we expected last year, at least performance-wise. Mm-hmm. We expected them to be a lottery team, and they caught fire and did what they did, and they doubled down on that instead of continuing the rebuild that they were going to do post LaMarcus Aldridge. So again, they did. I mean, Neil O'Shea is going to have to, he's the one that has to answer for this because this happened on his watch. So, and according to Jonathan Go 123, yes, the Blazers did waste their money on Evan Turner.
Good.
Terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't necessary. They didn't need to do that with Alan Crabb coming back. They could have just rode that 3-guard line up there without having to even, have somebody else who's just like a complimentary player that could play some D in that role instead. And it just didn't work. And then Ezeli, that's the big problem as well. If they got any kind of normal Ezeli or maybe like a little bit of an improved version as he continues to progress, and you couldn't plan that he was just going to be out the whole time. I don't think. He would solve a lot of their problems, and then that would have made like maybe one of their other big men as an asset they could trade as well to upgrade. So, a couple of things that line up poorly, and then here you are, and are they going to make the playoffs?
I don't think they're going to. I think the Nuggets are going to steal that 8th seed. I think the Nuggets are the 8th seed that we deserve. They're much more fun to watch right now. Nikola Jokic is having a coming out party. Of course, I got to see all this last year, and then the Olympics to me were huge for him. But I think that we need to see the Nuggets get swept by the Warriors so everyone can see how much potential the Nuggets have.
I agree. That would be fun. Now, I mean, I've been looking a little bit more of the Moutier stuff, and I'm not really that excited about him. I got to tell you, I feel like there's just, I think he's out of position. I don't think he's necessarily a point guard. Do you think that?
No, not necessarily. But I think it's sort of like a Michael Carter-Williams situation, where he, his elite size made it so that growing up and then his 1 year overseas, he was able to kind of do what he wanted with the ball, and his playmaking was adequate. And I see flashes here and there, but his shooting is not good enough to be off ball, at least in theory. But he's a great cutter, and he's a good passer. He's a good willing passer as like the secondary guy. So I think that there could be something there moving him off ball. I love Jamal Murray as a point guard. I think that Jamal Murray, we're going to look at Jamal Murray as like the next Steph Curry once he starts kind of, finding his game. Because he's a good shooter. He's an electric, explosive scorer. So, yeah, we'll see what's going to happen there. It's going to be interesting. And, I mean, I'm a big Moutier guy because I love those big guards, man. I like a guard that can post up and do things for you like that. But it may not be there.
Right.
It may not be a there.
Right. And it kind of goes to another little thing about, like, why are they playing point guard? Who decided that that's the position they need to be playing? Russ, listen, I'm not going to get into the merits of whether Russ is a good point guard or not. I mean, obviously he's an all-star. He's doing his job very well. But it was weird that he didn't really play it that much in college. And then all of a sudden was just like, okay, you're going to be a point guard. Same with Moutier, and then especially in the context of this draft. And speaking of which, stay tuned later on today. We're going to do a halftime and a postgame show live during the Virginia Cavaliers versus the Louisville Cardinals, which will be a great game. So we're going to expand into college today on Periscope live. So join us for that later. But we have all these point guards who are going to get drafted into the pros, and they're very highly rated, and they all have a lot of experience playing this position. And it just weird to me when you start to try and shove these other players into these wrong positions so they don't fit them so well.
Yeah, and they did it with Zach LaVine too.
Yeah.
He hardly played any point guard and then came in the league, and they were like, all right, well, you're a point guard. Again, it's elite athleticism and elite size. And so you take a guy who's 6'5" and you put him at the 2, and it's nothing special. But you put the ball in his hands, and all of a sudden you've got a guy, a big guy. He can see over the defense. He can, do all these things that we talk about all the time. But Michael Carter-Williams is now like 4 years into the NBA, and teams are still playing him as a point guard. You would think that NBA teams would catch on by now. Now, of course, it's the Chicago Bulls that are still playing him as a point guard. So I'm not shocked that they don't see what's right in front of their face. But I've said this for like the last 2 years. Michael Carter-Williams is going to wind up in San Antonio, and he's going to play off ball, and he's going to be a dominant cutting wing, and he's going to play really good defense, and people are going to be like, Spurs do it again.
Right. By the way, if that doesn't happen, then he'll be out of the league.
That's right. Because he doesn't have the other skills.
Right. And he's in a toxic situation where we see, we're seeing Jimmy Butler like not pass to him. And that's got to be, and he's playing like he's got the weight of the world on his shoulder. So he needs to get out of there anyway, or something needs to change to see him improve. I don't know how important that is to Bulls fans or not, but if you're a fan of Michael Carter-Williams at all, then his only hope, it looks like, is to get out of the situation and just find that other situation that's going to be better for him. There are versions of the Matrix where he can be that guy, and I always liked his defense. Even now it doesn't stand out to me that much, but now he's not really doing much, and so we'll have to find out how that's going to play out. Bulls.
Quickly, let me respond real quick. So the people on Periscope are pointing out that he was Rookie of the Year and he was good in his first season. Well, the reason he's Rookie of the Year is because of counting stats. He was the best player on a bad team. He had the ball in his hands all the time, and they played a really fast pace, so it inflated his numbers. It was money ball. But instead of with a closer, it was with a point guard. This is not hard to do. Like, if you know how to game the system, as Hinkie did, this is what, it was set up to create a better asset than what they had.
Right. And as a result, right, we saw now, but there was still evidence without question that he had some real ability. So,
well, he's an NBA player.
Okay.
Yeah, he's an NBA player. I just don't think he's an NBA point guard.
Yes. Okay. That's a very good distinction. I mean, the point guard of all the positions, we're going to move you from power forward to center, okay, or whatever. Like, that's a little bit of a transition that it's more viable or easier to make. But when you're talking about throwing him at a point guard of all places, that's still the one position that you need to have a lot of nuance and a lot of experience and a lot of understanding of how that works. It's really hard to throw you in on the fly and expect you to do well at the NBA level.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things. Like, there's primary reads, secondary reads. There's all these things that you've got to be responsible for. And also, man, it's really hard to be a point guard in the NBA if you can't shoot. If you've got the ball in your hands, like let's say the average NBA point guard has the ball in their hands, let's say their touches. They're touching the ball on 65% of possessions. And let's say that their usage is somewhere between 20 and 30. Well, that's a lot if you can't shoot.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's a ton. So, you need to be able to shoot. Like Elfrid Payton, exactly. As someone just pointed out on Periscope, Pistons N just pointed out on Periscope. Elfrid Payton is a prime example. Good luck winning with a guy like that. And I like Elfrid Payton's defense, but, man, not being able to shoot is a killer.
Absolutely. And it wouldn't be hard when I'm watching him shoot to understand a little bit about the rhythm, what he's doing to help him improve. And by the way, Moutier's the same way because he hangs on his shot way more often than not. And, of course, he's going to be inconsistent when he does that. And that's how we used to shoot it. Like in the 60s and 70s, you'd hang in the air, pause, and then release. It's too hard, especially from any kind of distance, to shoot that way consistently. So, it's weird that these little things would be easy to go over. At least, I mean, who knows? Maybe it wouldn't, but it just seems like they should try that, get that ironed out, and he'd be a lot, in business. Which reminds me of, again, to go back to Briante Weber, he has a one-motion shot, and it looks really nice. And then also brings us back to another little guard. Speaking of point guards, is Yogi Ferrell. We did a breakdown. If you haven't seen it, go on YouTube and watch my breakdown of his amazing game. He had 32 points and led him to the win for the Mavericks. Out of nowhere, out of Indiana, a guy who played a lot of years in college and was very well polished. Why, Portland kept going underneath every screen as if he wasn't a shooter, yet it would have taken you 10 seconds to look at the scouting report to know that he was a good shooter.
Yeah, was it C.J. McCollum or Dame that said that was the game plan?
Oh, I didn't even see that, and I wish I would have seen that.
One of them said it, and to me that was like they just completely threw the coaching staff and scouting team under the bus. Yogi Ferrell is a good shooter, and what do you think, Cleveland? Is he a good playmaker? I mean, he was in the D-League up until 5 days ago, or 6 days ago, whenever it was that what's his face? Who got hurt to give him the spot?
You mean Darren Williams?
No. They had another 10-day. Why can't I think of the guy's name?
Oh, I don't even know.
Anyway. He was just in the D League. So the guy can shoot. He's a good playmaker. He and Seth Curry are playing really, really well together. Mm-hmm. It's been pretty fun. I mean, that was a fun game. I mean, he dropped 22. Now, I don't know about doing the Jordan shrug. But I mean, that was a fun game to watch. I really like his game, and again, back to Portland, they're having some major issues on defense, and at some point you have to start looking at the coaching staff, and you have to say, are these guys? Is it scheme? Is it talent? Is it both? I think some heads could roll this summer.
Interesting. Who?
I don't know. Like, you can't fire Terry Stotts. You just can't. Like, he's too good of a coach, and you can't give him up. Plus, they just signed him to a longer deal, and I don't think Paul Allen is interested in firing coaches, with like 4 years left.
Right.
So I don't know, man. Like, I don't think a Damian Lillard trade is off the table.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's either CJ or Dame. And you know what? The question now becomes is who's having a better year? Is CJ playing better than Dame? And the numbers, it's tough. It's like there is something going on there. And when you mentioned that CJ is probably a better one, it's interesting because he definitely has that ability. He shows the ability to understand that when to be aggressive at a shot and when to kick it out. Dame doesn't always do that. He seems like he's much more about shooting than he is about setting his teammates up. So, and then again, with their offense, it doesn't really matter. That's sort of, you can pretend that Dame's the shooting guard. It only matters on defense, right, for them.
Right.
And that's what's killing them. But there's a great question here by David for Braves HD asks, can we agree the Wizards are playing the best in the East?
I would agree.
There's your boy, John Wall.
That's my boy. Hey, John Wall, look, man, I think the Wizards have a chance of being the 2 seed. With what they're doing right now, like they definitely found their groove. John Wall has been amazing, and they're just behind Boston. I think they're only like 2 games back. And remember, I picked Boston to win 60 games this year.
You did,
but they rely a little too much on Isaiah Thomas to create their offense. And when you have a guy like Isaiah Thomas, who, hey, hats off to him. 29 points a game is not easy. He's averaging over 10 points a game in the fourth quarter of games. So, I mean, he really is the king in the fourth.
Yeah.
But his defense, he's like +2 because his defense is poor. Right. So, it's tough for that to be sustainable. They've been disappointing because they're not defending like I expected. But, yeah, man, the Wizards have really turned it on. They're scoring in bunches, but they're a good defensive team. Otto Porter should have been an all-star. John Wall should have started the all-star game. And, that's not even controversial.
Right. Well, I just did a video where we broke down the Kelly Oubre adjustment. And when he comes in the game with the starters, it's like they just dominate. And they've been getting a lot of run with that recently. And it's great to see him. He's kind of like that Kent Bazemore guy, but I think he's better than Kent Bazemore and will be better than him in a lot of different facets. And they're both sort of this, similar kind of players. But Oubre's really just been a revelation and a great pickup for them. And I know they were happy with them and really wanted them, I think, when they picked him in the first place. But he is now developing into that guy, and now they're deep. And John Wall, the only problem I have with John Wall is his synergy numbers, when you're looking at like his efficiency, are not great. And it's, his shooting isn't always great. It's up and down. But when you combine the points and the assists, he jumps right back up there with other point guards. And so that's the indication there that, that he's doing some really good things. And then defensively, half the game we're getting the John Wall we know on defense, and the other half is sort of, average.
Yeah. And remember, he's still bouncing back from that knee surgery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Brian Windhorst just put out a piece today where he was talking about it. I mean, John Wall, like this summer, was using a walker to get around, right? Like, so I'll give him 50% of the defensive plays. If he wants to kind of take a break, that's fine, because I'm getting John Wall defense on the other ones. And in crunch time, he's been fantastic on defense. I mean, to me, he's probably the best defensive point guard in basketball.
When Chris Paul's not playing.
Yeah, good point. Right, forgot about Chris because, he's been hurt. So.
Right. Well, listen, I don't want to forget about anybody else. So, but as we wrap up this show, we want to make sure everyone knows to check out our halftime and postgame show. We're doing college today, the big Monday game on ESPN, Louisville versus Virginia. I don't know why I can't remember that, but that's who it is. And so check out halftime and postgame on the Periscope. We're going to try and get it on YouTube and Facebook Live all at the same time. And let us know what you think about this. Hop on Twitter and tell us if you'd like to see this is our podcast. This will be up in a few minutes on iTunes. And if you'd like to watch us and do it this way, let us know. I think it was a really fun time. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? You in, Dave?
Yes, I am.